Hi, I'm Courtney, the host of This Is Fine, Right? This podcast exists for the moment when you catch yourself asking that question. Is this actually fine? If you're here, something in you already knows there's more to look at. And this is your permission to investigate it in your body, your emotions, your patterns, and the way you're living your life. We talk about chemistry, signals in the body, lived experience, motherhood, and how all of these parts connect. Not from a place of fixing yourself, but from understanding yourself. This isn't about you becoming the best version of you. Let's be honest. You're here because your body and mind already led you here. You don't need to be reinvented. You need clarity, direction, and encouragement as you stay in the driver's seat of your own health. I'm not your average gal pal. I get real, a little sciencey, and I'll help you learn how to work with your body instead of against it. So let's get into it. Hey guys, today's episode is going to be all about digestion. Now, I know that everybody throws that word around like crazy. And I get it because it's important. And I feel like a lot of people that are experiencing digestive issues are rampant. So, what do digestion issues look like? Constipation, bloating, gas, diarrhea, fatigue. All of these things can indicate your digestion might not be working really well. So even though that might be easy to see, what I feel like a lot of people don't know is exactly how their digestion works. And I feel like when you can understand how your body does the process of breaking down your food, it might be a little easier to determine where you might be off and why. So I just want to explain that to you. So you have a good grasp on we as humans, how we get minerals, vitamins, nutrients, amino acids, fats, sugars, all these things that we need for our body to function from our food. So first things first, when you eat food, the first thing that it does is obviously it goes in your mouth and it goes down your esophagus and it goes into your gut. But the first thing it hits is acid. Now, acid has a pH of about 0.8 on a scale from 1 to 14. So that's considered on the acidic side of the scale. Once your acid hits food, it turns anywhere from a 2.0 to a 3.0 on the scale. And what that does is your acid starts breaking down the food. And I know you know what this feels like. You know, when you get like acid in your throat or you're going to vomit and it like burns, that's acid. So it starts breaking down your food. It also is the first thing that keeps bacteria from moving into your intestines. And this is where it can grow and ferment and all that. You basically don't want critters getting into your intestines because it's bad news. So having the right amount of acid to break down everything that's going into your body is really good. Some things that can indicate you're low in acid. You get burping, you get bloating, you get pretty chronic constipation. Those are indicators that you're probably not producing enough acid. So that will be something to look at. If you are somebody that is struggling with those types of things and acid is probably not working out very well for you, you can do certain things to help combat that. Supplements is a good one because it's a more concentrated and effective way to hit this problem quickly. People could be suffering from not producing an acid from years to decades. So it's a pretty big thing. You can go a long time with that. So you really want to hit it hard. One of those supplements can be hydrochloric acid. And when I work with my clients, we do some simple at-home testing where we can kind of determine where they're at in regards to digestion. And we kind of know where to start them with hydrochloric acid because you do have to be very careful with this. One, you don't want to get a hydrochloric acid that also has ox bile in it because, again, we need straight HCl to help with this. The other thing is that you have to go very slow when you're using this. You could take anywhere from 1 to 5 capsules, but if you're taking too much, you can feel a burning sensation. That's not necessarily bad, but it lets you know I need to back off a little bit. The other thing is that you might not feel a burning sensation. And then what could happen is that you're actually taking too much and you can produce ulcers in the duodenum. So that's one. The other thing you can do is you can simply just add an apple cider vinegar at the end of each meal. So you're getting some sort of acidity in with your meal. And it is taken at the end. When you do a hydrochloric acid, you do want to use it in between your meals. And I'm not talking about like a little tiny meal. You have to have a substantial amount of protein in the meal in order to take acid. So even with an apple cider vinegar, I would suggest the same thing. It's going to be a little more gentle on the stomach. So, but either way, you need a good amount of protein to do that. The other thing you need is going to be the second process I'm going to explain of digestion. So we've done the acid. We've talked about how you know if you're possibly not producing enough acid. So now we've hit the food has hit the acid. It's starting to break down. Now it needs to move into the small intestine where it's going to break down even more of the minerals and nutrients that you need for all of those things to go to the places they need to go so you can start optimizing and living with some real vitality. Once your food goes down, it's going to go through the duodenum and it's going to hit the bile, which is at the first 10 inches of the small intestine. Now, bile, remember we were talking about the pH scale being from 1 to 14. Acid, once it hits your food, is about 2 to 3. Well, bile lives on the other side, the alkalinity side of the pH scale. So, being a hairstylist, I know all about pH. And this is chemistry. Chemistry happens in your body. So, when you have a low pH hitting a high pH, it's going to cause a sizzle, an explosion. These are volcano type science things you used to do when you were a kid. We want that. We want that in the body because when that happens, your food is completely emulsified in that bile. And the bile, what it does is in between meals, it sits inside the gallbladder and it's concentrated at like 18 times the amount of where it is at on the pH scale. So when it hits things, especially like fat, it helps emulsify it and break it down. And then it pulls out the toxins that are in there. And then it moves everything else where it needs to go. Once it pulls out the toxins, that's when it goes out your colon and it's out your poop. And there you go. Now, things that could indicate that your bile isn't moving very well. 1, major diarrhea. So like I was saying before, if you have low stomach acid, you're going to have major constipation. If you have low bile flow, you're going to be on the other side and you're going to have diarrhea. So there's that. The other thing, you might experience a lot of gas, and I mean, we're talking nasty gas. That's kind of works on both sides, but I feel like with the bile, it's a more hot, smelly gas because what happens is if you don't have enough bile to emulsify your food and remove the toxins, what it's going to do is it's going to sit in your stomach and it's just going to start fermenting and it's going to cause bacteria, which causes gas. So there's that. Another thing you could experience, is nausea. And if you're somebody that wakes up in the morning and you're like, I ain't doing breakfast because I don't feel hungry, this could be because the night before when you had dinner, something was off, more so the bile, but something was off and you weren't getting anything from your food. So your motility, which is how quickly food moves through the body, is slow. because you're not getting that explosion. And now it's sitting in your stomach and it hasn't actually digested yet. So the last thing you want to do is add more food to it. So now going back to when I was talking about HCl, it is very important that if you are going to be using any kind of supplement with HCl, even like apple cider vinegar, knowing it's going to be a little less on the tummy, you have to be functioning with bile. Because if you're just going to keep adding the acid, like I said, you could get an ulcer. So the bile and the acid need to be together in order to neutralize either one of those things. So be careful with that. Because like I was saying, look at the symptoms that you're having. Low bile flow can even be things like Crohn's, IBS, colitis, like severe acne, because now your fats aren't being emulsified by bile. Where's it going to go? Well, it's going to store it in your fat cells, and then it's going to try to push it out through the skin. So pay attention to your digestive symptoms, your digestive issues, whatever you want to call it, your discomforts on the daily. I think a lot of people understand when they have a digestion issue, but maybe not why or where it's coming from. And furthermore, like I was saying, doing the physiology testing, it's going to tell you where you're off. The only thing is that there's obviously a couple options with correcting HCl that could help you. With bile, it's a little less. The only thing I've found that actually works for it is beetroot. This doesn't necessarily mean if you go out and you eat a bunch of beets, you're good. It has to be literally like from the root in the ground. It's a certain enzyme in there. So they do have like beetroot type supplements that you can use. Of course, when I have my clients, I use a certain type of supplements that I like to use. Okay, so we've talked about HCl helping to support your acid production, which you need to have happen at the beginning of when your food goes into your body. And then with those capsules, you could take anywhere from 1 to 5, and you just want to be careful and make sure that you are getting a good supplement that is just strictly HCl. And then if you want to go the lighter route on that, you're going to use an apple cider vinegar at the end of every meal. When you want to help out your bile, which is the second process of digestion, the food goes into the acid through the duodenum into the bile, is emulsified. Beetroot is the best solution for that. The other thing I want to talk about is enzymes. Now, I've heard a lot about digestive enzymes here and there. They are important. So what they do, so enzymes you get from your food. And usually after around 30 years old, you actually start to lose enzymes. So it can be pretty important to use enzymes with your meals. Most importantly, with food that has been cooked, because enzymes lives on your food, plants and vegetables and all that stuff. But what happens is that when you cook it, they kind of just die off, especially if it's over 180 degrees, which is pretty much where it's going to be at. So supplementing with enzymes is a good idea, usually 1 to 2 capsules with your meals. And what will happen is once you start to run out of enzymes, it's really important that you have them, because what your body's going to do is say, I need them. So they're going to start pulling from your repairing enzymes, which you also need those. So being able to give that to your body is a really good idea. Now you can get them with like a lot of, raw fruits and vegetables, but you have to be careful with that, because based off of where you might be on this pH scale and where your acid might be flowing and your bile might be flowing, it might be difficult for you to break down those kinds of foods. The other thing is, if you are somebody that might have a bacterial type overgrowth, we're talking like H. pylori, SIBO, those kinds of things, enzymes, and especially like starches, grains, gluten, those kinds of things can actually feed that bacteria. So knowing if you're struggling with something like that, you definitely want to go to a doctor and get those tests looked at. Usually it's like, I think H. pylori and I think SIBO as well. They're like a certain type of breath test, because it shows how much CO2 is in the body and like where it's showing up. So just a thought on that, especially if you start to take like a probiotic or an enzyme and you are getting like that really sulfury type gas, that could be an indicator that you might have like the wrong kind of fermenting going on. So that's just my 2 cents on if you were to implement something like a probiotic or an enzyme. The other thing is that if you are somebody who is also struggling with HCl, a really good natural thing you could add for that is an unrefined sea salt. So one of the ones I found that works really well is the Redmond. Yeah, it's Redmond is a good one. The other thing is you can add that. I mean, you can add that to all of your food. You could add it to your water, because what happens is it produces chloride, and chloride is what helps create HCl. So it's an all over like good thing for you to try out. Now, if you are somebody who is on the bile side where you might be struggling, some things you can do is like a coffee enema or a suppository. I've recommended things like Zenaplex. They're not the most comfortable thing to do, but it really helps break down that thickness that's going on in the bile so you can remove the toxins and junk. I believe there are people that do, I think it's like a colonic that could help you out with something like that too, if you're nervous to kind of do something like that on your own. Another thing is, if you're eating a lot of grains and gluten, you're also going to be really thickening up that bile. So what you want to do is try to switch to more proteins and more fats, which is actually what your body needs. The only thing is you got to pay attention. If you are eating more of those instead of the grains and the gluten, but you might be feeling a little run down, a little lousy, that could also be another indicator that you don't have enough acid to be helping you break down those proteins and fats. But that's what you need more than anything for you to be functioning and pulling minerals and amino acids from your food. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. I hope that makes sense to you in realizing where some of your symptoms might be coming from. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this more sciencey type of episode on digestion. And if you have questions, come and find me. I have all of my links in my show notes, and I will speak to you guys soon. Bye for now. If something in today's episode resonated, you're always welcome to stay close. I write weekly letters and offer one-on-one support for people who want to understand their body more deeply, so they can keep listening, keep responding, and keep moving forward with clarity. My work is about helping you become your own healer in a way that's grounded in real life. All the links are below, and I'll see you next time.